Stick your fragments of silicon together to get bigger fragments of silicon.
All right. Welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always, our Galaxy and Petty fan. And as usual, let's get to the news. Such as it may be. Petty, why don't you start us off this week?
Let's see. This week has actually been pretty decent so far. I guess today I had my last physical therapy session, at least till I have my pump surgery. So hooray! Um, my mom today also got the time off, so that way she can take me to my surgery. Because before we weren't sure like how that was gonna work. Because Dad had put in for the 5th off. He may have had to work the 4th because he works overnights. So if that would have happened, he'd have no way to get home from work, grab me, and then take me the almost hour to the hospital. So this way, that's all taken care of and stuff. Um, as far as video game stuff is concerned, been having fun with the new Final Fantasy 14. I believe it's 6.4 update. So, hooray, finally new content. And yeah, just been kind of leveling up stuff that I've been neglecting to do and getting ready for Raid, which is Saturday is when the group is going to finally see about getting into it. So, yay, killing things.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot else going on that I can remember. So I guess next victim.
No, that'd be you, Galax.
Let's see. Memorial Day weekend was pretty low key. Got a little bit on the hot side here, but some would say that that's how it's supposed to go. I decided not to put in my air conditioner yet. Hope I don't regret it, because it's still been kind of cool at night. Video game wise, while I have mostly been playing Tears of the Kingdom and have beaten the Second Temple, I also the new Splatoon season starts either now or tomorrow. I think it's now, because it's tomorrow in Japan or whatever. And I'm going to be playing that to work on the catalog and check out the new Salmon Run stages and equipment and stuff. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll do a little bit of that later. We'll see. And I think that's about it. Sunday, what's the word? Langrisser with Mac was another learning experience, that i.e. not actually beating the stage. So we'll be retrying that next week.
It seems to happen often.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's actually amazing at strategy, and I don't know Langrisser as a series, so I'm not as good at making suggestions.
That's fair. Anything else?
I think that's about it.
All right. That means it's my go. Let's see. I suppose the big news is I went to my doctor to get my quarterly or so checkup. It's like every 3 months. And it was as routine gets. So, yay. Like, there's like nothing new or amazing to mention, which is good when it comes to the doctor. It's like, it's one of those things that you don't want to hear, things that may have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, as far as video games goes, currently I'm playing through Life is Strange Before the Storm, in addition to the games that are up for review this week. And yeah, that's all my news for the week. So, merrily, we shall be rolling along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Ryan of Vertigo Gaming Inc.
Hey.
It's Vertigo Gaming.
Yep, that's correct.
Not to be confused with Vertigo Games, which is a separate thing.
Yeah, no, they we had that name before them, but then they copyrighted it before us. So apparently, as soon as you lose.
Yeah, you might want to change what's on screen right now, because Vertigo Games, they are a VR developer.
Yeah, they're VR. It's okay, it happens.
Yeah.
My bad.
We got to work on our SEO apparently.
Yeah, it's fine. There have been worse conflicts. Like, at least your name does have a bit of differentiation.
Yeah.
I think I fixed
So yeah,
it.
Vertigo Gaming Inc.
Oh, gaming.
Yeah.
Gaming.
Yep.
Gaming.
Yeah.
I was close.
Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, so how we like to get started is we like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and all that noise. And we begin that journey by asking this particular question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
So personally, I was my brother and I were gifted a Sega Genesis that came packed with Sonic the Hedgehog 2 back when we were kids. So that would have been what, like 95 or 96, something like that. That was the starting point. Sonic was great, and haven't checked him out recently, but I've heard he's got a comeback.
Frontiers is pretty good. I will give you that.
Yeah, I want to check that out. I'm dying to revisit that.
It's on sale right now on Steam. It's kind of off topic, but
okay.
definitely go look into grabbing that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the start, and then my first realization that like there were real games on the PC was when my brother, who was in high school at the time, he's older than me. I was in like middle school. He came home with a copy of Diablo and Myth 2 that he bought off of a friend at school. And before that, I thought computer games were only like educational stuff that, I got from the library or whatever, like the educational kids stuff. And those two things blew my mind. Myth 2 still holds a special place in my heart. And then professionally...
Some of those educational games are good.
Oh my god, yes they are. I absolutely agree with that. But then, yeah, professionally, I've actually known the founder of Vertigo Gaming Inc. since, as I kind of joked about earlier, since when it was Vertigo Games, and it was a freeware website, essentially, of games. And that was like 2005 or something like that. And I just kind of became friends with him, David Galindo. And then several years later, I graduated from college with a degree in advertising and writing, and just kind of asked if there was anything I could do to help. And I got hired to write emails for Cooks Serve Delicious 2, which eventually expanded to also be writing restaurant descriptions and food descriptions. And then got brought back for Cooks Are Delicious 3, where we put in a story that kind of delivered on all the weird lore from Cooks Are Delicious 2. And in the process of making Cook Serve Forever, I became a full-time member of the company, and I have a dual role as a narrative director, narrative designer, and social media manager / community manager.
Those are two roles that are quite far apart.
Yeah, they are. But I think kind of the thing that bridges them for me is that background I have in, like I said, I graduated from college. I had a degree in advertising, and like I got into advertising because I thought to myself, like, I love to write, but I don't know how to make that turn into money. And at the time, the best idea I had was, I bet people need me to write advertisements for them. And so now, all these years later, I've been able to kind of use both of those skills. Since community management is, in my case, especially a lot of using Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, even YouTube Reels. Or sorry, is that YouTube Shorts? God, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Sorry to YouTubers out there.
They'll never recover.
No, they will not.
Not from you, just from being on YouTube.
So yeah, it's a dual role, but it kind of fits me well, especially that I get to be a part of basically every part of the development process, because especially in this case with Cook Serve Forever, it's a very narrative-heavy game. We actually wrote the story before any other part of the game was really designed. I shouldn't say that entirely. Like, there was definitely design documents and concepts and things like that being worked on, but the story came very, very early, and a lot of the game was shaped around that. And then, like, now that the game is launched in early access, I am also working on the kind of marketing social media side to, respond to all the feedback and let people know about updates and stuff like that.
You still there?
Yes. Did you lose something, Adam?
It sounded like you cut out there.
I think he was just done with that part of the sentence.
Right.
Ryan, are you still there?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes that has happened.
Okay.
Anyway, so when did you become a social media manager? Like, have you been doing that for Cook Serve Forever? And is that something that started with 3?
I believe that started kind of in between the two. So technically, while we were in development for Cook Serve Forever, it just kind of happened that we had an Instagram page just called Cooks Are Delicious, and it was largely pictures of real life food taken both by like our team and fans of our games. That we had a chat room or section of our Discord where people could submit their actual food photos that they wanted to show off. And so it was just a lot of like real life food photos, and I just that advertising experience in the back of my brain kept on tickling me whenever I saw this Instagram page. And eventually I just kind of reached out and I said, hey guys, I asked David Galindo, I said, hey, do you need someone to pick up Instagram and actually show off the game and get some engagement done and try to build our followers there. And so that was where it all started, and that was like, I want to say late 2020. And from there, it just kind of grew to managing all the social media platforms and the community at large.
Neat. And I suppose we should get into Cook Serve Forever here. Now, first thing I'm noting is it's not called Cook Serve Delicious anymore. Why is that?
Yeah, so from the very beginning, the intent of creating this game, before we had a name for it, was to recognize the shortcomings and areas for improvement with the Cook Serve Delicious series, and like also kind of spread our wings and go in a different direction and try to see what else we could do as a company, because a combination of like the sequelitis, where we have we have our fan base, but fewer people are interested in a sequel every time there's a sequel, and there's it's harder and harder to iterate on that and keep people interested. It's not like we have a huge marketing budget like a AAA studio where we can just say, oh, it's a brand new game and you should definitely check it out. So we're kind of thinking like we wanted to do something different, but kind of similar. And some of the things we identified with the Cooks Are Delicious series were, aside from the fact that it was hard to think of where else we could take that gameplay, there was a huge barrier to entry in the difficulty level. If you look at Steam, I don't know about right now, but I know we had a sale like a month or two ago on it. And after a bunch of people picked it up on sale all these years later, there were several negative reviews for the game saying that they couldn't get past the tutorial. And that is not something you want to see in feedback for your game. And we kind of knew this all along, right? Cooks Are Delicious 1 started off pretty easy, and then it got really hard, and then Cooks Are Delicious 2 kind of picked up from there and got more challenging, and then 3 more or less was the same, to the point that like the final levels in Cooks Are Delicious 3 were designed to be, as David Galindo put it, impossible. And he's genuinely shocked when people show that they've completed the game. But we wanted to make a game that people actually played, and especially played all the way through. And so we tried to figure out what we would do differently, and we just wanted to make a new food game set in the same universe, and just kind of reinvent the gameplay and try to make it more accessible, and for the people that wanted to play Cooks Are Delicious 1, 2, and 3, but just couldn't get into it.
And I guess that involved getting rid of deliciousness.
Is the tutorial in 1 hard, or just...
So the tutorial in Cooks Are Delicious 3 specifically, I forget what it's like in 2, but in 3 it's really, really hard, and it's partially our fault, admittedly. I think it's a very short tutorial. It doesn't really take its time to explain everything very clearly, and like we start off with one of the most simple food, what we thought was one of the most simple foods to make, which is like pretzels, which is like you either have a German pretzel or a classic pretzel. But because of the way the game is set up, especially with the user interface where everything is kind of on all 4 corners of the screen, a lot of new players who haven't played the first 2 games, they have no idea that the game is telling them to make one type of pretzel and not the other, and they think that they can just hit whatever button they want essentially and make whatever one they want. And so it's just this like, it seems like such a simple thing to us, but like to any new players, like they're just, some of them stumble because they don't quite get it. And so, yeah, we wanted to correct that. And I know the tutorial for Cooks Are Forever is like much more elongated. I kind of consider what's in early access right now is almost, there's no like clear line where the tutorial ends. Like there's a point where right now, as we're seeing on screen, you're in this city called Moraine that you eventually get out of the city and you go to a different city, and that's kind of the end of a tutorial section, but there's still new features being introduced all the time at a very gradual pace that you can kind of learn on the go. And yeah, as far as the title, we didn't even know if we wanted to call this Cook Serve anything, and we made a list of probably like 30 different names, and we could not find anything that made sense, that was succinct, that was catchy. And then finally, someone came up with Cooks Serve Forever, and we thought, oh, that's great. It's a nod to the past, but it's we're making it clear that it's not the 4th game in the series. It's a new thing,
I guess you could somewhat solve the problem with the other ones by like releasing a collection that has all 3 and they unlock in order or something.
Yeah, that would be great. We do have a bundle on Steam.
So people don't try and start with. I think some of the Advance Wars game had that same problem, although in Advance Wars it was somewhat mitigated by the fact that like half of Advance Wars 1 was basically a tutorial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we do have a bundle where you can get all 4 of the games now, actually. But yeah, you just play them in whatever order you want.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and do you think you've accomplished the goal of making the Cook Serve Forever game here more accessible than the previous ones?
I think so. From all the feedback we've gotten, if anything, we've accomplished it too much. We recently released an update just a few days ago that actually bumped up the difficulty on the base ingredients. So the way that this game works is the individual ingredients you're preparing, so like tomatoes and lettuce, all have their own difficulty level that fluctuates over time based on your progress through the game and their progress in each location. And for the first couple weeks here of early access, people were saying that it was too easy. So we actually made those a little bit more challenging. But overall, we've gotten a lot of feedback from people who were interested in the Cooks Are Delicious games, but were too intimidated by them to actually pick them up. And those people are absolutely loving this game. And I should say another thing that was a barrier to entry, aside from just the difficulty, is, as I mentioned, the user interface on Cooks Are Delicious was on all four sides of the screen. And we realized, thanks to the wonderful gift of Twitch, through watching streams, that a lot of people watching someone play had no idea what was actually happening on screen, or what the player was actually doing and how that related to what was happening on screen. And so, like you see with this game, when you're playing, instead of having information to look at on all four sides, there is one section to look at during gameplay right in the middle bottom of the screen.
That certainly condenses things. Now, what about like the actual gameplay? How does Forever here differ from the other Cook Serve games?
Yeah, so in the other Cooks Serve Delicious games, you were managing a restaurant or a food truck, and you selected your menu, and you had all these. I think the third game had like over 300 foods, or at least 300 variations of the foods. It was quite a large list, and each food that came up, you'd have multiple customers come into your restaurants to order things. You'd have to kind of select which one you wanted to work on, depending on that particular customer's level of patience, which is represented by a timer, their order slowly falling off the screen. You'd select that, and then you'd see exactly what they wanted on their sandwich or whatever. And you'd have to press a button that related to each ingredient to put the correct ingredients on the order. And so with this, instead, what we've done is taken it and simplified it quite a bit. So you're only getting one order at a time. And instead of having to look at what they want and then figure out where it is, you just see, okay, this person wants a portobello burger, as it says on the bottom right. And to put on the onion, you press NA key and then right twice, or hold down NA key or do the previous key. And it's all, you can't really get an order wrong unless you press a button wrong. And so it takes away that a little bit of that strategy of memorizing like what each food is, but at the same time, we've added now in the case of the ingredients, like I said, each ingredient has its own kind of difficulty level that fluctuates with the perks and the leveling up of the locations. And for example, the button prompts for cheese will always be the same across every ingredient. So we've kind of traded off, instead of having to memorize all the buttons to press to make lasagna, you now can memorize the buttons to press to add the cheese to the lasagna versus adding the pasta.
And that makes for a simpler experience than what came before.
Correct.
Okay. And those are the basics, I presume. So how does things ramp up in terms of, because you mentioned that apparently this game gets new systems added for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's, as you see in between each shift, the morning, afternoon, and evening shift, you select perks represented on the far right side of the screen. During gameplay, you can see which ones are selected, and those help to dynamically change the gameplay by either increasing or decreasing the difficulty of ingredients, or making certain prompts, like the not prompt, show up more often, and that's one that particularly trips people up. And so the base level of the ingredients actually increases every time you play a level. So each level has its own, each location has its own like difficulty level that increases every time you play it. And then within that, you can also adjust the difficulty through those perks. And there's other systems that are still kind of on the horizon, still being worked on. that I don't want to spoil too much for. But there's going to be other ways to adjust the difficulty level, and of course we're in early access, and this is a very early game, and we're still working out all the systems. So everything that's even in this version is subject to change. Like I said, we already bumped up the difficulty level of the ingredients a bit. So yeah.
Okay. And what is the actual story going on here?
I'm glad you asked. So as I said, the game kind of started with a story, and one of the points we're trying to make now, especially post-launch, is that this is a very narrative-heavy game. It's I think this is the type of thing that will appeal mostly to casual gamers and people who just like to kind of relax with a story. Not that there isn't a challenge, of course, but if you want to just kind of, we've designed it so that if you want a challenge, you can seek it out, and if you don't want the challenge, you just want to experience the story, you can absolutely do that and not experience the highest difficulty levels, at least so far in this version of the early access. So you play as Chef Norikaga. She is a home-taught chef from the impoverished town of Moraine. She has dreams of making it big, like her idol, the culinary queen Chef Rhubarb, who's got a television show that's kind of like a hybrid cooking and talk show. In the fiction of our universe, it's the biggest show on the planet, syndicated in every country and all that. And she's famous because she was the first chef in history to earn 3 stars in the Coup d'Or, which is a competition that comes along only every 10 years to rank chefs, kind of like the Michelin star system. And in this case, she's the only chef to get 3 stars, and 3 stars is the most stars you can possibly get. And it's been going on for decades, right? So it's a big deal that she's the only one to get this, and so she's kind of her fame is predicated entirely on that. And Nori wants to do the same thing, so eventually she moves out of Moraine. When times get a little tough, she finds the opportunity to go to the bustling city of Helianthus, which is a solar punk city, and very futuristic and covered with greenery, if you're not sure what solar punk means. And she is going to spend the summer basically honing her skills and learning new recipes so that she can compete in the Coup d'Or and try to get 3 stars like her idol. And I won't spoil anything beyond that, but along the way, she may or may not meet Chef Rhubarb. She may or may not encounter various friends and enemies and learn things about herself and her place in the world and everything else going on. So.
And how does this differ, if at all, from the previous Cookserve games, narratively speaking?
So narratively, the first Cookserve Delicious game didn't have much of a story at all. I think there was. I didn't work directly on that one. I contributed on a volunteer basis some like 3 or 4 emails. But I believe with that one, the story was just like essentially the story was representative of the gameplay that you are trying to build your restaurant up from a 1-star kind of hole in the wall to a like 5-star fancy restaurant. And in the second game, it was more or less the same, where we wrote in something about like how you had to restart your restaurant for some reason. The first one, apparently, the company managing the building you were in were committing a bunch of fraud or something like that. And so you had to start a new restaurant, but all the story in the second game was told through the optional emails and the food descriptions and the restaurant descriptions. So it was all essentially lore. And then with Cookserve Delicious 3, we brought that lore to the forefront. So you were driving a food truck through a post-apocalyptic wasteland, which surprised a lot of people who didn't read the emails in Cookserve Delicious 2. And there was a story of the chef character from the first 2 games continued in that one, where they were driving across the country to the nation's new capital in Nashville to compete in the Iron Cook Food Truck Challenge to become, once again, the greatest chef of all time. But outside of that, there was the real kind of what I would call the story was actually a story of your 2 robot companions, Whisk and Cleaver, who did all the narrative heavy lifting because they were actually voiced characters where the chef was completely voiceless, and we opted to have the chef represent the player essentially, so kind of nameless, faceless person. And so Whisk and Cleaver, the robots, had their own story of them bonding and finding their place in the world, but it was kind of a side story to the player's quest. And so with this game, the story, as you can see, is front and center. There's these beautifully illustrated dialogue box scenes. There's fully animated cutscenes, and then there's a lot of dialogue that occurs during gameplay too. That is both dynamic, like barks and things that may occur over time and be unique to the player's experience. And there's also story-driven segments during gameplay where Nori and her partner Bree will chat back and forth and have little conversations with themselves or other people in the city.
And this is it. This is in the same universe as the other game.
Yes, it is. We've been vague about the timeline deliberately because it's just one of those things where we didn't want to focus so much on the world as much as the characters this time, whereas all the other games focus on the world, so it's kind of a change of pace that way for us. But yes, it is set in the same universe. This is still the post-apocalyptic United States, albeit one that has seemingly progressed a bit, at least once you get to Helianthus. That's a city that seems like it's kind of on the rise, whereas in the previous games, everything was on the decline.
And has it been that much of a change focusing on character versus the world?
Yeah, I think so. It's a big challenge, especially as a writer, especially I think within the cooking genre, because it's not something that there are a lot of examples to draw upon, right? I mean, I've played several, and there were some that I played specifically to kind of do research for this. One that comes to mind in particular is Battle Chef Brigade, is a good example of a cooking game that not only has great gameplay, but also has a really engaging story that feels kind of like you're playing an RPG. So the biggest challenge with writing a character-driven story was figuring out how to tell a character story through cooking without it being incredibly repetitive and the same as what we've done before. So, in fact, when we first started... Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think anyone mentioned anything.
Oh, sorry. I thought one of you was talking. That's all right. I'll keep going. So the first version of the story that we had for this game was actually we as the writers didn't know. We had a vague idea of what the scope of the game was, and it was a lot smaller back then. And we were thinking that we were going to more or less repeat the same story as the previous game, but then do it in a more character-driven way to still have the chef on their way to prove that they're the best, and then go to this competition called the Iron Cook Chef Competition, or whatever it would have been called, which is the same as what it was called in the Cook So Delicious games, and go to this competition and then compete there and prove they're the best, and that would be the end of the game. And in this case, we decided after a while of drafting that, we realized that was really boring, and that was something we had done too many times, and it was too predictable. And so while the character here has the same vague motivation to kind of prove that she's the best, it's we've kind of tweaked the competition to make it more interesting, and the way that the story takes you there is going to play out, I think, to people's surprise. And again, don't want to spoil anything, but I will say it does not play out exactly the way the other games did. And I think when you ask me, like, if it's like what the challenge is with doing a character-driven story versus the lore-driven story, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is at one point we were trying to figure out, we were, and by we, by the way, I should credit the other writer, Nicholas Crack. I don't want to not name drop him. He was my writing partner and incredibly instrumental in writing this game as well. He and I were trying to figure out what the story would be and how to make it all work. And at one point, we were certain that we had to figure out how to make a stealth segment work in a cooking game. Because the story we had at the time required...
stealthily?
Yeah, we couldn't figure it out. We ended up not going that route, but for the longest time, we thought for the character arc to go to make sense and to be really fulfilling, they had to sneak into somewhere and steal something. And we knew that wouldn't work in a cutscene. It wouldn't be as fun of a game if you couldn't play that part, and we could not figure out how to make that work with cooking. And eventually, we scrapped it, and I think the game is better for it. But that's just an example of like one of the hurdles we came into, because it just, as a writer who's never written a character-driven game before, it was tough for me to figure out, right, all these hurdles and all these obstacles of how to make a story that is good and interesting and fun, but also works around the limitations of the game itself.
And has it been much more writing this time around versus the other games?
Oh, absolutely. I think I had the page number at one point in front of me, and I don't now, but so Cooks Are Delicious 3, for example, which was the biggest story we'd had at the time, was, I think, like a 30-page script, and for this game we have, I want to say, over 600 pages of script. And that's, when I say that pages of script, that's kind of hard to envision, but like we had a script that just told the main storyline from start to finish, and then we had a script for every interaction with the shopkeeper, and a script for every time that the characters are back at their home and just cooking and relaxing and that sort of thing, just to keep kind of side stories separate from the main story and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was like, I want to say like there were a dozen different scripts, and between them about 600 pages. So much bigger. And in fact, I think when we started this game, we thought we'd have only like 4 characters that would actually be voiced, and we thought that would be a pretty big jump from the previous game. And this one has 15 voice actors alone, and some of them voice upwards of like 3 to 5 characters that actually are named. And one voice actor in particular, Andrew Hansen, an Australian comedian, he I was there for the recording when he recorded an entire scene. It was like a 1-minute scene of about 4 or 5 different characters talking to each other, and he did every voice for all of them, and he did it all the way through without stopping, about 6 takes in a row, without having to pause and do one voice at a time or something. And we just got to work with the best talent, and yeah, it's a giant story full of really really cool characters.
And what state of early access is this game in?
Yeah, so this is, I would consider this like a very early version of the game, or at least when it first launched it is, and now we've been updating it very frequently, as I mentioned, even to the point that there are things that we're seeing here in the tutorial section that were not present in the day one launch in early access. But this represents about 20 to 25% of the main storyline in the game, and I can't say how much of the actual gameplay features. That's not really my domain, but it's very early. We had this game running for a demo in February for Steam Next Fest. And that was actually the first. Not only was that the first time the public got to play it, but it was actually the first time many of the team members actually got to play the game. That's how early in the development of the actual finished. I shouldn't say early development, but that's how recently the game had come together in a state that was playable for that sort of for a demo audience. And after that, it was a couple months of adjusting things, and then this one came together, and as many people know, it was meant to come out a week before it did, and there was a delay, and that just came down to just technical errors and working through things and trying to get it ready on time. And it was just one of those things where the game came together just in the nick of time, and it's definitely an early access game that we are continually working on. And I would once again stress anybody checking this out, we are accepting all feedback, and we're absolutely excited to hear it, because everything you see is subject to change in terms of the gameplay and We're making tweaks all the time based on the feedback, and we'd love to use player experience to make it the best game it can be.
And what made you want to go the early access route with this game?
So we'd done that for Cooks Are Delicious 3, and it went really, really well for us. And in that case, I think we released it similarly, where it was like the first 15 to 25% of the game, and then we did a bunch of iterative updates on that, but then after a couple months released the next 25% of the game, and then COVID hit, and we waited. It took a little bit longer to do the next chunk, but it worked out really well, just in that we got all that player feedback, and it really helped to make the game much better. And we wanted to do that with this again, and just get the game out to players as early as possible, and give them the soonest chance to give us feedback, so we can, like I said, we're planning on 1.0 launch early next year, 2024, and we just want to get all that feedback and give players a chance to contribute. And also, it's from a storytelling perspective, I can tell you it's fun for me, because it's the difference between watching a TV show week to week and binging it all in one day, and that I get to kind of watch people online speculate and try to figure out what's going to happen next without, 5 other people having already binged through the whole thing and spoiling it for them.
Or it's adapted from something else.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That being said, what has been the feedback offered up by the people who've been playing the game?
So it's no secret that we have a mixed reception on Steam right now. It's sitting at, when I checked today, it was actually 50% positive, and that's not something that we didn't anticipate. I shouldn't say we anticipated 50%, but we anticipated a bit of a mixed reception because of how different the game is, and just the circumstances of the release and everything. And especially but the thing is, we expected the response to be what it is from the people that are giving it, by which I mean that there are people who wanted Cook Serve Forever to be Cook Serve Delicious 4, and they wanted the same user interface, they wanted the same level of challenge, some of them didn't want any story. They told us that they skipped over all that in the previous games, and that's not why they came. And so there's been a lot of the negative reviews are not saying that the game is broken by any means, but just that it's not what people wanted out of what they believe to be the kind of essential cook serve experience. But on the other hand, there's the other 50% of reviewers who are the people we essentially made this game for, and they're the ones that say that either they did play the previous games and they like the change of pace, and they're happy to go back to those whenever they want to go back to that style of gameplay, and they're the people who liked the idea of Cook Serve Delicious, or liked watching people on Twitch play it, or they like food games, but they thought the Cook Serve Delicious games were too intimidating or too difficult for them. And those are the people that are giving us glowing reviews for the exact same reason that the other people are giving us negative reviews. So just telling us that, they love the story and they love how casual it is and how they can kind of select their own difficulty. And so we're our big goal with early access is not only to take the feedback and apply it, but also to make sure that we're telling people that this is what the game is and this is what it's going to be. And we're not gonna, just because we have old fans saying that they want the old user interface back, that doesn't mean that we're going to bring the old user interface back, right? That's not what this game is. We're not saying that we're done with Cook Serve Delicious. Cook Serve Delicious 4 or something like it could definitely come around in the future. But this particular game is something different and unique, and we're very proud of it. And we're hoping that eventually it kind of finds its audience and gets its own kind of following, just like the previous series did.
That is understandable on multiple levels. And do you feel confident that this game will come out, 1.0 in early 2024?
Oh, absolutely. I think that was a timeline that was designed to give us some breathing room. And obviously, every game has issues and delays, and there are always unforeseen things. As I said, Cook Serve Delicious 3 was in early access longer than we wanted to, because this thing called the COVID pandemic happened, and absolutely no one could have foreseen that aside from some futurists or biologists who knew it was going to happen eventually. But we couldn't have predicted that, and we acknowledge that can happen. But our timeline, and we have a roadmap available on our Steam page as well as in our newsletter. And that roadmap kind of plots out exactly what we want to do over the coming year towards 1.0, and that timeline was designed to give us some breathing room. And so, if anything, I wish I could say we would love to get it out earlier. We would love to get it out earlier, but I'd say definitely we're very confident in early 2024 at the latest.
Well, that's good, I suppose. And are you targeting consoles with this?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is continue to polish up and finish the PC version, and then we want to launch 1.0 kind of simultaneously on PC, Mac, and then all the major consoles. And we'll, of course, work on getting this Steam Deck verified as well.
And will this game be appearing on the other PC storefronts?
Yeah, so it will be available, I believe. I know it'll be on Epic, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I don't want to get it wrong, but they will be available on some other storefronts.
Okay. And is this available for Windows only, or are there builds for Mac and Linux?
So currently it's only for Windows, but like I said, we will be 1.0. We plan to launch with Windows, and I'm not as privy to the details of that sort of development. But that may even come out before the 1.0. But don't quote me on that.
Okay. And has pricing been sorted out? As in, is this game going to get more expensive as the content gets added and it heads towards that 1.0 release?
So it will not go up in price. We're offering it right now for $29.99 US. And if anything, what we're going to be doing, we have our usual tactic of taking advantage of Steam sales and that sort of thing and daily deals, and it will be available for those who like to wait, for the patient gamers out there. It will be available, if anything, at a lower price in the future. I can't say when. I can't say if it'll be, at 1.0 or after, but it will not go up in price. I can guarantee.
Good. Right, I'll see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
Yeah.
I think I'm good. I've been so far enjoying just kind of screwing around with the game.
Yeah, I hadn't really heard of these games before we had you on, but they do sound interesting, so I might look into them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we had someone from Vertigo on to talk about 3 back at
Yeah, I was actually on. I have a note here. Season 12, episode 14A.
Yeah,
that was me.
It was. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was you or someone else. Like, that's happened before, and it was a while ago.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that was what, 3 years ago?
I think so. Like,
I
I think it
suppose I
was.
could have just forgotten.
Yeah, I knew it was somewhere.
Yeah, it was in
around that
2020.
time.
Yeah,
But,
roughly 3 years ago. Yeah, it's been a while.
So it was good catching up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully the development of this goes, further. But I guess that is for the future to see. Anyway, right. It was once again good to have you on the program to talk about Cook Serve Forever here. And yeah. So the game is Cook Serve Forever. It's currently available in early access on Steam for the price of $30. And go pick it up today.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. This has been a pleasure.
No problem. No problem. Hopefully we'll have you back on the program, whenever the next game is ready to be talked about.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Okay. Right. So, Petty, play us to the next segment. Right. So, welcome to the topic of discussion. So, there were many things that we could have talked about this week, but we decided on marathon.
Bungie has decided that that's going to be the name on something that they produce again.
Yeah, like a thing that, I'll be honest, I'm not sure why they're going with marathon. Like, I'm not sure if anyone really knows right now.
It's a recognizable name.
Is it though?
I mean, to certain people.
Yeah, but here's the.
Like, if the thing they're putting out with that name is going to be something that those people like, it remains a lot to be seen.
Well, yeah, that's the
marathon. They showed off the new marathon at the Stony State of Play thing.
Yeah,
and it looks like a pretty modern actiony shooter thing. The original marathon was a series of classic FPSs in the approximately Doom mold, or System Shock mold, with a lot of lore and.
I'm like it's actually no, it is an FPS in the Doom mold, but it's got Deus Ex or System Shock levels of lore going on here. Like
it's one of the big, relatively early rampant AI video games.
Yes, it is.
Like that's the entire thrust of it.
No, it is not.
I mean, the setting. But yeah, I guess.
I'm like, well, but
I'm probably describing it badly.
Yeah, you are, like, in a sense, because like you're ignoring the whole precursor to Halo thing, and that's the fit.
If I recall,
the
Halo was supposed to be the 4th marathon game.
Yeah, I'm like, it wouldn't surprise me. But I'm like, Marathon has a lot of connections to the future of Bungie and the past. Like, but okay, we got to address the modern Marathon because the Marathon 2023 or whenever it releases, it's going to be what they call an extraction shooter. Like, if you don't know what that is, well, do you know what Escape from Tarkov is, or Vigor? Like, it's a shooter in that mode, like, which once again is very different from what the Marathon trilogy was. Like, and that's the rub. You're calling this Marathon, but that name has connotations. That name has a lot of attachment to it. And, like attaching a name from the past to something that doesn't resemble it always has a risk, to say the least. Because, the question for modern Marathon is, why are you called Marathon? Why is Bungie going down this route? Because, the IP was beloved, but that's to a certain subset of, Mac gamers. Like not even gamers. Like only the second game in the series ever saw a release outside of when it went freeware, outside of the Macintosh. Like it was Marathon 2 Durandal that got the port to the PC and Xbox Live Arcade for whatever reason. Like I couldn't tell you why. And that's and here's the thing, that's kind of important because Marathon 2 is very much a continuation of the first Marathon. Marathon Infinity. Oh boy, I'm not sure we're ready to crack open that can of worms yet.
I think we need some more alcohol for that one.
Well, yeah, because Marathon Infinity involves time travel.
Because fucking Bungie secretly does love their time travel a lot.
Well, it's also because Marathon 2 was the end of the story, or at least the end of that story. Pretty definitively. So they had. It's also because Marathon Infinity was meant to be an expansion pack to Marathon 2. And then they just up and said, we're going to make it its own thing. So, with that in mind, narratively, yeah, they could very much attach it to what came before. But yeah, here's the problem: we don't exactly know what, if anything, Marathon 2023 is going to be. And here's the thing: they could very much do that because Bungie likes doing that. Spoiler alert: there's marathon shit in Destiny 2. Like,
yeah. Part of their 30th anniversary pack, I believe, has a bunch of references to Marathon.
References? They fucking tell you what happened to a major character in Destiny 2. Like, I don't know why they did that, other than that's just a Bungie thing, I guess, but that happened. You learn what happened to Sullivan. Granted, it wasn't a grand leap of logic there, given what was hinted. But that still happened. As far as the Marathon trilogy itself, yeah, this is a bit of a weird beast because it's halfway to Imsim Town. Because it's got the deep lore of, once again, Deus Ex or System Shock or Ultima Underworld, something like that. But its gameplay is very much in the Doom mold. In fact, this is a thing of firsts, or it was concurrent, like dual wielding pistols and other weapons. We saw it in Marathon. Can't exactly claim to be the first there because it came out on the exact same day as Rise of the Triad, which is another game that did the dual wielding thing, like specifically dual wielding pistols. Marathon here actually had that trumped because you could dual wield shotguns. Like,
that sounds difficult.
Yeah,
It sounds like you're gonna break your fucking arm.
Well, it's like Marathon wasn't really worried about that kind of realism, now was it? Like,
I'm fighting what can easily be construed as insect people. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, but here's the other innovation that this thing brought to the table: rocket jumping. Like, a good 2 years before Quake introduced the masses to rocket jumping and grenade jumping, Marathon was doing it.
And this is when you cause an explosion under yourself to get extra height, yes?
Yes. And it wasn't just like it may like I don't know exactly if it was something that was born out of an accident and they kept it in, but it was if it was certainly early enough in the design process where you you maybe don't have to rocket jump, but you have to rocket jump in order to get goodies and shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it's something that they incorporated into the design process, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Which is less the case in like Quake, at least Quake 1. Like bunny hopping and diagonal jumping and all that stuff. Those were more things that were found by players doing multiplayer than like an actual gameplay tactic in the single player. Like now, as far as the lore goes, God,
There is lore in
yep.
this game, yes.
There's deep lore, but here's the thing: since this went the Doom route in terms of its gameplay, you can ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of the things. The lore is in like text files and stuff that you can read.
Mm-hmm. At least the first game, like the second and third, the lore is more deeply embedded. I'd say, like, as in you'll get interstitials in those, you know.
Wait, is
Which you
tab
have
my
to actively
interact button?
skip through
Yeah,
to ignore them.
like, but yeah, you can ignore the lore. Once again, in the earlier Infinity, good luck. Because there's a trick to Infinity. Like, that is, like, if you're just going along in that game, you're not going to get very far. Because you've got the electric sheep levels. Like, and,
Of course, electric sheep. I
well,
hear androids dream of those.
yes, it is a direct reference to that. And you do seem to be dreaming. Because, well, you're not an android, you are a cyborg. You're one of the Mjolnir class of cyborgs. It's one of those things that's uncovered in the game. Like, you're one of a series of 10. Like, or there's like 10 in your production lines, something like that. And it's like something happened with the other 9, and you were stuffed on the marathon. Like I said, it's a whole thing. But in Marathon Infinity, if you're just going along with the game, you're going to get trapped in a loop, like a time loop. Because once again, Infinity is just cracked, I'd say, because that's involving a lot of not just time travel, but multiverse time travel. You know, you're dealing with a whole bunch of timelines there. And in terms of the actual game, once again, not only does it have the frenetic moment-to-moment gameplay that you would expect from a Doom clone, its level design is very, very mid 90s. Like, sprawling is a good word for what Marathon delivers. Evil is another. Because
Sprawling with very badly signposted ambushes, like intentionally badly signposted.
that and the switch puzzles are very painful. Like, it's very,
lots of steps.
yeah. Like, I don't want to get into spoiler territory too much, but it can be painful because, okay, for I don't know, maybe because this game was born on the Mac, or they hate people, or whatever.
They hate people.
This doesn't have a traditional save system, or rather, it's a checkpoint based save progression versus save anywhere. Yeah, you don't save
Which
anywhere.
one is traditional depends on whether you're used to PCs or consoles, I suppose.
In the realm of FPSs, save
Oh no,
anywhere.
in PCs it's very in PC games, especially FPSs, save everywhere became standard very early.
Yes, like even in 1994, the default was you can save anywhere. You don't do that in the Marathon games. You have to save at terminals at specific points. And those points can be pretty fucking far apart. Like, and if you die, you can lose an hour of progress or something like that. This has happened to me. Like, it's not good. It is awful, and I hate it. It's like I'm sorry, I don't think, like, not for this kind of game design. Like, maybe if if the levels were less spindly, I'd say yeah, that would work out. But here, no, I don't think it's a good system. And I think that's why Marathon here never really clicked with me. I've played more than my fair share of classic 90s FPSs. But, and I suppose we've been dancing around it, but as far as the actual story and the lore that's going on in the Marathon games. Okay. Well, the actual Marathon, to address that's the ship you're on. Like, the UESC Marathon, a colony ship. But here's the thing. Maybe in a nod to Doom, maybe not. This is actually the hollowed out moon of the planet of Mars, Deimos.
So it's big.
Yeah, very big. But
I have heard some theories that if you're going to be mining them out anyway, that's actually one of the better ways to get a protected interstellar travel thing.
it's not how that happened, though. Oh no! Marathon also went the route of cyberpunk dystopia. That was sold off to the Earth because Mars, I think, defaulted on some loans. Also, population control was pretty bad in the inner sphere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the marathon got created.
Oh no, I just mean in terms of. Remember, I'm talking about. Excuse me, 1 second.
You are excused.
And he's dead.
Like, ooh.
Sorry, I had to sneeze. From a practicality standpoint, it doesn't make sense to hollow out a moon unless you were going to hollow it out anyway.
Yeah,
because that takes a huge amount of time and resources. But if you are, then the hollowed out thing would actually be a very high tier protection against environmental dangers while traveling through space.
Yes. And as Mjolnir, you are tasked to defend the ship against the Four, which is a gestalt species. Or that is to say, it is a collective of many races. Like, in case you wonder where Bungie ever got the idea for the Covenant came from.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, how this works is more Half-Life than Halo, I'd say. Like, because the Four don't really, they don't have a leader race, or at least one isn't identified versus one of the slave races, the Sphinx. And there's also the trying to think of the Sphincter, which is a predecessor to the Sphinx. And no, seriously, we could go for hours just talking about what's going on in the lore of Marathon, but we're about out of time. So,
but anyway, the short form to bring it back to the original thing is that while you're dealing with this invasion, with these enemies, you also have to deal with one or more of the AIs in charge of the ship, deciding it didn't necessarily care to follow orders anymore.
There are 3 of them.
And one or more of them is going rampant.
No, they are all rampant. Yeah. Durandal, Tycho, and Lita. The thing is, there are different stages of rampancy.
Yeah. That's kind of where Halo got it. For anyone who saw the, wondering what the hell is AI rampancy, they kind of use their own, I guess, quote unquote, in-universe logic for that.
Well, here's the thing. The ideas from Marathon go all the way back to their first FPS, Pathways into Darkness. But once again, we don't have the time to get into that. Anyway, so we're going to wrap things up here. And yeah, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Coming up on the week ahead. So we do have a new installment of MSP happening in about 15 or so minutes. Cross your fingers, knock on wood. Eddie, be sure to have the MSP stuff on standby.
Yup.
Because I do not trust the Mac may very well just sleep through this. So coming up on the Sunday reviews, we're having reviews on Counterattack, Firmament, Clutter 12, It's About Time, Collector's Edition, and Batboy. No Friday show this week. It's been kind of difficult lining up Friday shows for whatever reason. I don't know. Just a lot of not responding to your emails, people. It's annoying. Anyway.
Well, and who really wants to work on Friday anyway?
Anyway, until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.